Good evening. We're going to get ready to begin. My name is Dr. Vanessa McPhail, and I am the Executive Director for the Office of Equity. Thank you for joining us this evening for Meet the Finalists of the Independent Monitor. Today, we have Dr. Cherie Dawson-Edwards, who will be the moderator. Dr. Cherie Dawson-Edwards is a professor of criminal justice and urban and public affairs from the University of Louisville. I will now turn it over to our moderator, Dr. Cherie Dawson-Edwards.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm really excited to be here with you all tonight. I know some familiar faces in here from the listening sessions that we had earlier this year. I just want to do some house cleaning and housekeeping before we get started. First, I'm honored to be asked to come back, but I also wanted to let you all know what the role of the moderator is. I don't have an opinion. I'm impartial. I'm just here to facilitate the questions and do some distilling and combining of the note cards, which we'll talk about in just a minute. I may combine similar themes so that we get as much information as we can, and I may not get to everyone's questions tonight, but I will try my best. I'm here in my role as a community member and as a community engaged faculty member who cares about these issues deeply. So first, history and purpose. What are we doing here? I want to just briefly remind people about the community commitment, which is Louisville's detailed plan of police and public safety reforms. The plan includes changes for uses of force, search warrants, stops, searches and arrests, protests, and responses to behavioral health emergencies. So like I said, we held 2 listening sessions earlier this year prior to the release of the RFP, or the request for proposals. And as promised, we are back seeking community interest in the finalists. A quick note about independent monitors, because we heard from the community earlier this year, and I just want to make sure we all have the same definition. So the independent monitor is a team of subject matter experts to evaluate Louisville's progress toward implementing the community commitment, which I just referred to. The monitor team should read policy, watch trainings, review paperwork such as arrest citations, watch body camera video, check data, read reports from LMPD and talks with the community, and writes reports to the Community Safety Commission. So I just want us to do some level setting because everyone was not at the listening sessions to hear that information. So as you know, as was noted when you came in, there are note cards for the questions. And so throughout the time, if you have questions that arise, then you can fill out a note card. Please only fill out 1 question per note card. That will make my job a whole lot easier. Thank you. And they are collecting note cards in a basket, I believe, and they will bring them up to me, and I will go through them and try to distill them into themes or a question that captures. If there are multiple similar questions, I will do my best to do that. Please make sure your questions are related to the scope of the monitor's work. I know we care and we are passionate about a lot of things related to our community, and that's not negated or minimized because we have a narrower focus tonight. So I would ask that you make sure that your questions are related to the scope of the monitor's work. I will do my best to give everyone equal time to each of the finalists, and I will try my best to alternate who answers the questions first. Each team will also have an opportunity to provide closing remarks, and then you will hear back from me after the conversation with next steps. I do want to just timekeeping purposes, so while this is slotted for 6 to 7:30. We are scheduling to end at 7:20 because that's the end of the time in this location. And so in order to let people transition out, we will end around 7:20. So I'll be looking for final remarks around 7:05-ish. And so I'll be trying my best to monitor that as well. So really quickly, there are interpreters. There's an ASL interpreter up front, and I think a Spanish-speaking interpreter in the back. So just wanted you to be aware of that. And then there are restrooms when you exit and go past the front desk as you walked in. So, you ready? Let's get started. So we're going to start with team introductions, and we're going to allow each team 5 minutes to introduce themselves. So they are seated up here and in front with me, and there are mics for each team. We're going to start with 21 CP, and that's only because they're the left side of my page, not for any other reason. So,
well, thank you very much for being here and having us here. We really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and introduce ourselves. We have a very brief time for introductions, so let me start by just asking a question to myself and answering it, which is, if I were in your position, what would I be looking for in a monitor and a monitoring team? And to me, there's a lot, but three things are sort of prime for me. One of them is independence, one of them is excellence, and the third one is capacity or commitment. And just to briefly go over those, independence, you want and need a monitor that has the experience and the courage and the judgment to be fair. And not only to be fair and to call balls and strikes based on data, but to have the 360-degree type of experience that allows them to bring different perspectives to the monitoring task. Second, excellence. You need people who have deep experience in matters of police reform, and again, preferably from all different sides of the police reform efforts that have gone on in this community and this country for many years. And then third, capacity and commitment, because even if you're excellent and even if you have incredible fairness, if you don't have the bandwidth, the commitment to the Louisville project, right, you can't deliver what the community needs. So I'm going to go through our team, starting with myself, tell you a little bit about yourself, and hopefully you'll see that this is the team that brings that to this effort in a way I think it's very hard for others to do. First, I'll start with me. I'm the proposed monitor. My name is Steve Dettelbach, and I spent 35 years of my life as an attorney. I do two things, basically. I have been a civil rights attorney, and I have been a prosecutor. And that's really important to understand. That's the way I view things, because I view community safety and protection of individual rights as being coextensive, reinforcing values. And I think that's really something that is in the community commitment all over the place. I spent my time in the Obama administration as the presidentially appointed United States Attorney in Cleveland, Ohio, where I'm from. I implemented and investigated a consent decree there when I was doing that job. I also was appointed by Attorney General Holder to be the head U.S. attorney of all the U.S. attorneys on civil rights matters. And then in the Biden administration, I came back and I had the privilege of being appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate to run a federal law enforcement agency. I ran the ATF, or the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. I was the second ever confirmed director of that agency. Next to me is the proposed deputy monitor, Ron Davis. Ron Davis worked with me in both administrations. He was the director of the United States Marshal Service in this last administration, appointed by President Biden, confirmed by the Senate. And in the Obama administration, he ran the COPS office, which is the office that was in charge of all the collaborative reform efforts throughout the country. He also was 30 years as a police officer, including the chief of the East Palo Alto Police Department, and was selected by President Obama to be the executive director of his task force on 21st century policing. Sitting down is Chief Ramsey. Chuck Ramsey has been a police veteran for 30 years. Started in Chicago, was the chief of police in Washington, D.C., was the chief of police in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, both cities while they undertook significant police reform. And he was named by President Obama as the co-chair of the Task Force on 21st Century Policing. Emily Gunston, who's sitting on stage. Emily Gunston started her career as a public defender in California. And then she went to the Civil Rights Division, where she did police reform investigations and implementation at departments all across the country. Hassan Aden, next. Chief Aden spent 25 years in the Alexandria Police Department and then was the chief of the Greenville, North Carolina Police Department. Ben Horwitz He's a data guy. Ben started his career as the head of analytics in the New Orleans Police Department when they were undergoing reform with Chief Harrison, and then started AH Analytics, which goes around the country working with departments in places like Ferguson, Missouri, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and here on police reform. And finally, Jessica Drake. Jessica Drake works on police reform from the perspective of community engagement. Because every community is different. She has gone around the country working with communities. That's just a bit about the team. We are all thrilled to be here. I'm especially thrilled because this community lost its partnership with the Department of Justice in this effort and has stuck with it. You haven't stopped. You have kept going. It's incredibly impressive, and I hope that you will give us a chance to work with you.
Next, we'll have effective law enforcement for all.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for allowing us to be before you as a finalist, to get your interest in being your monitor for your community commitment. I want to make sure we're clear that everybody on this team has walked the walk. And so I'm going to introduce us who are here, and there are a few people who are not here who are introduced, but we have walked the walk. I am Michael Harrison, the former commissioner of the Baltimore Police Department and superintendent of the New Orleans Police Department, both of which were in federal consent decrees, making me the only chief to lead 2 different departments through federal consent decrees. I'll be the lead person monitoring this team as the primary liaison to LMPD, Metro Government, and the Community Safety Commission. Eric J. Melanson, right here, who was with me in both New Orleans and in Baltimore as my chief of staff in both places, and a deputy commissioner, though he was a civilian. He will be overseeing the efforts of compliance assessment, training reviews, semi-annual reporting, recruitment issues, and all of the other things concerning data. Cherie Briscoe, next to me here, was with me in Baltimore as the deputy commissioner, the first African or female to ascend to the rank of deputy commissioner in the history of the police department, who will oversee use of force warrants, protests, street enforcement, sexual misconduct investigations. Next to her, Brian J. Cord, the deputy monitor, a veteran leader in civilian oversight, nearly 40 years of government, nonprofits, including the Cambridge Police Review and Advisory, where he headed that up. He'll serve as the community liaison, focusing on community-based safety, fair and impartial enforcement, and police misconduct investigations. We have a few associate monitors who are not here. Lisa Fink, policy analyst with experience aligning police policies under federal consent decrees to include Baltimore, Cleveland, Puerto Rico, Minneapolis. She'll lead up our policy. There's Julie Solomon, an associate monitor who's a national expert in behavioral health crisis response with 15 years of experience, who will head that up under Eric Melanson. Bill Murphy, who's a veteran policing training consultant with expertise in instructional development and curriculum oversight, to head up training. And then we have subject matter experts, Ian Dombrowski, who will head up our performance review boards, audits, and data analytics, who served for 25 years in the Baltimore Police Department, is now an assistant state's attorney in Maryland. Murphy Paul Jr., the former police chief in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and a career before that as a state trooper where it rose to be the #2 in the Louisiana State Police. He'll oversee street enforcement, warrant execution, and other operations. Zoe Resick-Sobel, analyst specializing in early intervention systems, body-worn cameras, and data analyst. Samantha Ryerson, consultant with expertise in policy training, compliance assessments. And then Jason Armstrong, former police chief of Ferguson, Missouri, also under a federal consent decree. He's going to lead up community-based safety, protests, demonstrations, and operational topics. 2 more senior advisors we have who are not here, Dr. Laura Wyckoff, senior advisor, researcher formerly with the National Policing Institute, who will head up and support compliance measurement and evaluation strategies. Marcia Thompson, a consultant with prior work on Louisville's 2020-2021 policing assessment. She's going to help Deputy Briscoe in support of public engagement and reform. I started off by saying we walk the walk. Members of this team have now served as members of departments being monitored and now are monitors. Several of us, along with others, David and I serve as the co-lead monitors on the Minneapolis team, overseeing the reforms in Minneapolis. So we have now served on both sides of monitoring. I actually was the chief of police when David was the monitor in New Orleans, serving under David, and I was the police commissioner serving under the monitors of some of my colleagues here who are on the stage. So we bring the experience, and we know exactly what the Louisville Police Department is facing and what they're undertaking right now. And we hope to be able to bring that expertise, that technical assistance to help them achieve the goals that they set for themselves and the promises they made to transform their department. We're excited to be here, and we hope to be your monitor. Thank you.
Thank you all.
I'm sorry, one more. Our CEO of ELIFA, David
that's
Douglas.
important.
President and CEO David Douglas is here, 40 years, Yale graduate, Harvard graduate, has been doing this work all across the country, deputy monitor in New Orleans, co-lead with me in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Thank you. So great questions. I think you've seen me up here shuffling and trying to put them all together. So I'm going to try to get through as many of them as I can. Through your introductions, though, you've described the different folks on your team. One of the top 3 priorities that came out of the listening sessions was about diverse experiences on teams. And so you've stated that by listing who people are. But I want to give you a moment just to expand on that for this question. How would your monitor team reflect diverse experiences and perspectives? Oh, yes, you can go first. Thank you.
Thank you. So once again, we are made up of a diverse group of policing chief expertise. We have civil rights attorneys. We have subject matter experts in a number of areas. And so we have served as monitors and inside police departments across this country with a collaborative and collective experience of dozens of years. We have helped departments who are under consent decrees. We have helped departments who have self-selected to make transformation on their own. Right now, we make up a team several of us make up a team in Minneapolis that bring that same diversity. I think the thing that makes us unique is we are engaged with the community, and it is our motto and it is our desire to engage the community and educate the community, and empower the community for you to do this work. When we are all gone, this will be in your hands, and we want to make sure we engage, educate, and equip the community and bring the community along as the police department and the city has made promises to transform itself, that you will be brought along so that you can hold them accountable. You can be educated as to what needs to be done, and you are empowered to hold them accountable. It is that engagement, it is that empowerment, it is that education that makes us the diverse group, because what we think is important is not that this is a consent decree, but that's a community commitment, and it's surrounded around community. It is our specialty that we, at some point, turn this over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll tell you a little bit more about why I think that, and first of all, it's an incredibly impressive team, Chief. I'll tell you a little bit more about the team at 21CP. We have, let's start with police chief experience. We have police chief experience, decades of police chief experience in some of the largest departments in the world, and certainly in the United States. Chief Ramsey, as I told you about, Chief Aiden, as I told you about, and then Director Davis, as I told you about. All departments that were going through significant reform efforts at the time. And by the way that Director Davis and Chief Ramsey got to know each other was that they were called in, Director Davis was called in for collaborative reform in the Washington, D.C. Police Department by Chief Ramsey at the time. But we also have different experiences in addition. Chief Aiden was the monitor in Cleveland. I was the Department of Justice partner that we don't have here anymore, and he was the monitor in Cleveland during that time. And we have people here who have worked on monitoring teams all over the United States. But we also bring a depth of other experience. We have significant legal experience. I started my career in the Civil Rights Division, and I started civil rights units in 3 different U.S. attorneys' offices. Emily Gunston was one of the leaders in the special litigation section that went all over the country, putting together police reform efforts, but she started her career as a public defender. We also have people who worked in various different kinds of positions, right? We had a data and analytics person who serviced a department that was going through a consent decree. and we have community outreach specialties. And by the way, we'll call on this community to help us do that we budgeted for 2 separate spots from the Louisville community to be part of our community outreach effort. We have an inspector general of the Oakland Police Department. That's something else that Ron Davis did in his career when he was in Oakland. Just a bevy of different experiences. I'm trying to think if I have overlooked any. Oh yeah, and we have Eve Gushes, who's not here with us tonight, but ran the portion of the Chicago Police Department that dealt with the consent decree when they were beginning to go through their consent decree as well. So we have, and Matthew Barge, who was also my monitor in Cleveland. I think I must have been difficult to deal with because I went through a couple. But so we surround this problem of civil rights, of police reform on this team as well, and we'd be proud to have a partner, and that's what it would be a partner of yours.
Thank you. So in keeping with the diverse experiences and background, there is a question, and just for transparency and trust, I'm going to ask it, and then I'll get into the questions that are very similar. Have any of the finalists been on LMPD? The question also asked other police departments, but you've mentioned that you've been on other police departments. So are there any relationships with LMPD on the finalist team? Okay. All right. So the next big question, most of these questions are about community, and both of the teams mentioned community. So I have one question, then I'll do a follow-up related to your role and then your role in. So how will you involve representatives of the community, especially communities of color, in assessing whether police treatment is fair and sustainable?
Pass the microphone down to Jessica Drake to answer this question for our team.
Thanks, Stephen. I'm going to stand because I feel like down here I can't see you all. I really think that that's an important question to talk about. All community that find themselves often outside of a police department's process and wanting to know more about how their voice can be heard. It's really important for us at 21CP to include community representation from those from Louisville directly. We know how community engagement can work strongly in a police department. We know what it looks like when it works well, but we know that we are not from the city, that we don't know the ins and outs and the dynamics that are so critical to your community, the culture, the heart, and the health of it. And so we're looking for our team to be led by community liaisons that you help us self-select. We're looking for individuals who are well connected to stakeholder groups, who've worked ardently in community organizing, and who understand how to get the message out there and to reach deep into the community, into spaces that are not often underrepresented. Fair and impartial policing is a sensitive topic that is really challenging to collect data on. And we will be doing that. We'll be reviewing body-worn cameras. We'll be working on policy review and training that re-educates. And we'll be helping the PD understand how to assess this. But the community themselves, this is one of those first moments of early trust building with law enforcement. When you start to see officers say hi. When you start to notice that the interactions are less abrupt and have more engagement, when officers introduce themselves and make you understand why they've stopped you or why we're talking to one another. The communities that often feel that the least are the least likely to be in this room. So it's our job to partner with nonprofits, healthcare facilities, churches, food pantries, and other community outreach groups that get to the individuals who feel this the most deeply and sit and spend time in their spaces listening and hearing from the experiences that individuals are having. We can rewrite policy, we can do new training, we can look on paper and say, LMPD really has got this. But it's not until you sit in those communities and listen to the spaces in need of people who are often on the outside of the voices of being heard that you understand if this is really working. And so it's our job to get close, get near, and also bring your community members into that. Not me from Baltimore, though I did it in Baltimore. I spent 8 hours one day standing in one of our hardest neighborhoods asking everybody who came in and out of the stop and save if they wanted to talk to me about how the police had treated them. I would say about 50% of the people did, and about 50% of what they said was really hard to hear, but it's data that we got. We were a year into the process. I would have expected more positive things, but it told me we had more work to do. This is the kind of thing that we need to do in your community. We don't understand every cultural nuance in every corner and every place and space that you do. And so community representatives from your space is what's going to lead the way for us to hear how change is happening.
Thank you. Brian Kors from our team is going to answer that for us.
All right. I just want to make sure I'm responsive. Would you mind just repeating the question?
Oh, I moved it.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. Hold on.
I don't want to be one of those people that answers a question that didn't get asked.
Sorry, I completely moved it.
right,
It's about how you include the community. Yeah.
Great. So for me, including the community is not only that set of activities, getting out there, listening to people. It's necessary, it's vital, it's important, but you also have to educate the community. And I don't mean people don't know what's going on in their community or they don't know policing, but they need to understand how policing works in a little more granular way and how we can help them have an impact on it. We need to empower the community so that they actually can take that action. We're coming in as outside people to monitor and report, and you heard call balls and strikes, but it's not just is it right or is it wrong. It's actually helping people to understand what's happening. And then it does involve that listening. It involves doing it through a trauma-informed lens, understanding the history that's happened here, listening to people here in Louisville so we can know where you've come from and where you are. It's also about making sure that we are not just doing back-end accountability, right? It's not only what went wrong and how do we assess it, but how do we involve the community in looking forward and making sure that as LMPD is setting these new policies, is doing its training, is changing its procedures, that you are part of understanding it, informing it, changing it, giving feedback, and so that it's not just back-end accountability, but it's front-end accountability. And we can't do that, and the department can't do it, and Louisville Metro government can't do it without you, the people sitting in this room, the people watching it online, and the people who aren't here tonight. So it's got to be a combination of engagement, education, and empowerment, and doing it through that lens of front-end accountability, because that is ultimately how not just the voices and the stories and the opinions and the lived experience get heard, but how they get baked in to the kind of department that we want to help you co-create with Metro Louisville government.
Thank you. And the only part I missed was it also asked about communities of color. So the community, but also communities of color. I don't know if you want to add anything for that. Okay.
Just quickly, I mean, maybe it's obvious, if everyone can see, as a person of color, I grew up in Detroit. And I grew up in a time when the Detroit Police Department was literally killing black men in the service of creating a safer community. I know from my personal experience and from my family's experience that disparate policing is real. And for communities of color, it's not just the stories, again, it's not just the impact, but it's the idea that we can't even call the police, even though we might be the people that most need the help of the police. So again, when you do that work, you have to listen to everybody. You have to make sure that every person in Metro Louisville gets the kind of policing services that they need and deserve. And you also have to remember why we're here. We wouldn't be here in this room tonight if everything were equal, if everything were fair. We have to ensure that as monitors, we are telling you what's happening and listening to you about your experience of fair and impartial policing, no matter who you are, but always with special attention to the people who have been marginalized and have not gotten the services they need and have been on the receiving end of the worst kinds of police conduct. No one wants that, and we want to make sure that we help you create a Louisville free of that as soon as possible.
Thank you. So that was all one question. So moving to the next question. How do you balance public safety with protecting civil rights and community trust? So I would say this side's first. Yeah.
Great question. There's been a notion that you can't do both. We have now debunked that twice in two cities where fair and impartial policing, good policing, constitutional policing can live and can coexist with crime fighting and with public safety and with preventing crime, reducing crime, apprehending people who commit crime and holding them accountable. They actually go together. They're complementary. And while there are some who would push back and say we need to not do this and focus on that, especially during peaks of crime, when it peaks and there are things that happen, if you remain focused, they can work together. Good policing, constitutional policing, makes better outcomes for criminal arrests, criminal prosecutions, where you can restore trust in your department, you can restore legitimacy in your department. Prosecutions are handled better, convictions are coming faster and more frequently. Officers are doing things in a better way. You have less litigation because you're using less force, there are fewer complaints. Officers are performing in a better way. Citizen satisfaction is improving. So when you think about fair and impartial policing, constitutional and good policing, and public safety, they're not mutually exclusive. They go together. They're complementary. And while some have had the argument that you can't do both, we have now debunked that twice. And in many of the cities where there have been consent decrees, there is significant crime reduction. There's significant improved citizen satisfaction. And while it is not perfect, we can't let perfect be the enemy of good. It is significantly lower. Departments are performing significantly better. And I would say that these two things go hand in hand. And we are the example. You can look at members of this team. We are the classic example of how to put fair and impartial policing and public safety together, where you can see a department performing to the citizens' expectations and of reducing crime and making people safer, and also becoming the department they pay for, they deserve, and they expect.
I am going to select the same person to answer this question on our team as President Obama chose to answer it for the United States during the crisis of confidence we had in police-community relationships in the late time of his administration, Chuck Ramsey.
Can you please remember to hold the mic up and speak clearly for the recording
Thank you.
or the live stream? Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, again, it's really an honor and a pleasure to be here. Let me start by saying I agree with everything that Mike Harrison said. I thought he handled that question very well, but I do want to build on it just a bit, okay? Because these things just don't happen. You need solid leadership. You have to have good supervision. You have to hold people accountable that do not engage in the kind of activity that Mike was talking about. Without that, it's no guarantee it's going to happen. Now, can it happen? Should it happen? Absolutely. There's no question about it. Does having a consent decree or community commitment like we have here, something that's going to keep an officer from doing their job, quote unquote? You might hear that from a few officers, but I'm here to tell you that's not true. When I was in Washington, D.C., for an example, this is 1998, I actually asked the Justice Department to come in and take a look at our department because we had a serious issue with officer-involved shootings, use of force, and so forth. They came in, and we were under a memorandum of agreement with some 350 paragraphs, much like a consent decree, except you don't have the court involved. It's just DOJ and the agency. Part of that dealt with fair and impartial policing. That's always been an issue. And as it was mentioned earlier, do some police differently in some communities versus the other? Yeah, you can't deny that. Should it be that way? Absolutely not. And if you've got good supervision, and one thing that's throughout this community commitment document, they focus on supervision. They focus on leadership. And let me tell you something. There's a saying, leadership starts at the top. And that's true. But you need leadership at every level of the organization, not just at the top. Because let me tell you something. I don't care how good a chief is. And I was a police chief for 17 years in between D.C. and Philadelphia. I didn't know what was happening and what was being said in the locker room in the 3rd District. But you know who does know? That sergeant, the lieutenants, the veteran police officers, those informal leaders that every organization has. They know exactly what's going on. They know exactly who's doing the job the way it's supposed to be done and those that aren't. We have to hold people accountable. It needs tight supervision. We need to monitor it. This is all doable, folks. There's no question about that. There's no shortcut to constitutional policing. But if we don't monitor it, if you don't as a community demand it, because the reality is you get exactly what you demand. And on the other side, you get exactly what you don't demand. If you demand accountability, you demand constitutional policing, you refuse to allow officers to abuse you verbally, physically, make stops that are inappropriate, it's going to happen. So everyone needs to be accountable, on the police side and the community side together, in order to make sure that that fair and impartial policing takes place every single day in Louisville.
Thank you. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and we will return to community-related questions, but I want to move into some of the other issues that have arisen. About 8 questions are collected that are related to this being voluntary, the community commitment being voluntary. So the community wants to know more about your experiences with that. So I'll just read this one question, I think, that captures most of these other ones. It says, given your role is to monitor and report on LMPD's progress in implementing the community commitment, how will you ensure that any issues you discover will be addressed fully?
I'm going to let the proposed deputy monitor for 21CP, Director Davis, answer that because he worked on so many collaborative policing reforms.
So thank you for the question, and again, thank you for attending. Now, it's interesting, there's 2 types of agreements that we've talked about tonight. There's the consent decree that is usually enforceable by court, and then there's the voluntary kind of commitment that you're doing here. When I was in the Obama administration, we had collaborative reform. And I used to always say that a person can be held accountable, an agency in the court, a public court, or it could be in a public court of opinion. And I found out over the years, in my opinion, it's nice when you have a court, but there's no more powerful accountability mechanism than an informed, empowered, and dedicated and demanding community. And I think that's what Chief Ramsey is referring to. So I think the way you make it occur is at 21CP, we have to know our role and not overstep that. What I mean by that is we're not the police department, we're not the community, and our job is to be independent, honest brokers of the truth, to tell you what is being done, what impact it's having by engaging with you, but to give you that information so that you will basically be the ones that be working with the commission, the public safety committees, the council, everyone together, the community, to hold the city and each other and the department accountable to do exactly that. But the best way to do that, I think was mentioned, is to make sure you have the information needed to do so. And not just that things may not feel right, but specifically what is going wrong. Why are there disparities in stops? What is happening with the training? Why isn't it at 95%? What are they being trained? Why is policing different in one community versus the other? If I just was remaining the time with one of the previous questions talked about communities of color. Well, you see a very diverse group on both sides here. One of the things that always stands out for me, I've now 40 years in law enforcement, which means I started at 5, just a side note. And in 40 years, you know, my wife is also a retired police chief, the first female black police chief in California. And none of my kids went that way. They're grown and went a whole different way. But when they were kids, especially my son, now 40 years, I'm a cop, I respect the industry tremendously, but I still had to have the mandatory course for young men of color in this country is what to do when stopped by the police. So even as a cop, before I could give him the keys to our car, I had to tell him what to do to make sure he came home at night. And until that class is no longer mandatory, we have so much work to do. So this is why we're here, is because I think you have tapped into something that does not require a court. It does not require external forces. It requires you. It requires this community, this city leadership to hold your department accountable. We would be there to assist. We can't hold them accountable other than tell you the exact truth and evidence so that you can hold them accountable. So I think that's the key with voluntary. It means something. It depends on, it's not the voluntary. If the question comes down to is what happens if it doesn't occur. Now, there's been seen a lot of commitments, so I'm not suggesting it's going to go that way, but if it does, if it backslides, if they're not meeting the requirement, what are we or what are you prepared to do as a community, as a city, to hold the department accountable and say we need to proceed forward? So I think the long answer is, the short response would be that the holding of someone accountable has to come from you and from the city, and that we will assist you with that by giving information necessary to understand what has happened, why it has happened, and equally important, what needs to be done to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Thank you.
I think what struck me about that question is part of what Alifa's mission is to educate what it is the information that is provided means. And what does it mean to be accountable and transparent to a process? Part of our experience has been to ensure that there are clear objectives that are set forward in the community commitment, and that as we measure those objectives, that we're clear that we're not going to move the goalposts, that we have some consensus about where we are and where we're going. I think part of our experience has been, being in different jurisdictions who have been under federal mandates, that there could be a frustration amongst the department and even the community about what it means to be compliant. And for us, it's important to share that definition as widely and as again, in an education posture as much as possible, because people want to know what it means to be good. Part of it, our mission is to be, advocates for effective law enforcement, but it's so important because not everybody has the same understanding of what it means to be effective in a law enforcement posture. I'm a civilian, right? So I come through this not as a member from the sworn community, but as somebody who has a background in public policy and trying to make sure that the right folks are in the right spots who are doing the right good for the best use, right? And I think part of my experience has been learning and educating myself, but also understanding the challenges that Louisville has faced in this scenario. For us, it's important to educate ourselves as much as it is to ensure that the community is receiving the tools they need to be effective long term. I know that Cherie wanted to kind of build on that, but part of it is just making sure that folks know where the goalposts are and that there's a clear accountability for all of you to understand how we define what it means to be compliant.
And if I may add to that, I think that it is really in our name, effective law enforcement for all. This isn't the first time that we've walked through the process of a collaborative agreement, a commitment that everybody has said, we want this. We know what it's like to be across the aisle wanting something and not necessarily knowing the pathway to get there because you think there's this natural opposition. That's not the case here. Here, Louisville, you're primed. This is a grand opportunity to show the country a new path forward when there's disagreement between community and its police department and potentially its government. Historically, there have been challenges over challenges. This just didn't just start here. And though I'm not from Louisville, I am from Baltimore. Baltimore, I can tell you, has had a marred history of marginalized communities. I am a native. I still live in the city in which I served for almost 30 years. This isn't foreign to this team and its members. So that's the posture and position that we take in effective law enforcement for all. Understanding the needs of each side of this table, not just because we've done it as practitioners, and we all have, but because when we take off that uniform, we too are community. We too are a part of what we're wanting to see when we have to pick the phone up and call for support and service. So taking that exact posture professionally and being able to come to the table and say, you have a commitment. Allow us to help you build upon that in the way that makes sense, that gives you the ownership that as you carry it forward, you know exactly what to expect.
Lastly, we will be able to report to you in person and in writing whether the police department in the city are doing what they have promised and agreed to do. We will be able to tell you if they're doing it well, if they're doing it but it's moving slow, or if they're not doing it. If they have the will but not the capacity. If they have the capacity but not the will. We will be able to tell you that, and we will be independent, and we will be able to just tell you that, but we will offer them the assistance they need should they not know how to do what they're asked to do. We have the expertise to give them the technical assistance.
Thank you. Good.
One of the comments had to do with what you measure and how you know when somebody's in compliance. I'd like to ask Ben, if I could, to talk about data and analysis and how you know whether it's working or not.
Thank you. Like they were starting to respond as well, through the different experiences I've had both in New Orleans, assisting the DOJ in the implementation in Albuquerque, in Puerto Rico, Ferguson, Missouri, and assisting the team, DOJ team here in Louisville. It's really critical to start with, are we collecting the right data? Like, do our software systems, data systems have this ability, right? Do we have the technical capability to get the information out, create the reports that we need internally, and then perhaps most importantly, externally, so that y'all can see the performance that's happening, right? And that's one of the mechanisms that you can do to help ensure that a voluntary, this like opt-in commitment can continue moving forward, because you're creating information to be transparent. And as the chiefs have said, that's really critical to helping provide y'all with the information you need. And then this community commitment is laden with the role of performance reviews and audits, and how essential it will be to develop methodologies to ensure that we're actually measuring the right things, that we can measure, is use of force being done appropriately? How about our stops? How about other aspects of this commitment? Developing this shared methodology, developing mechanisms to ensure data quality, integrity, that we can trust the information, right? And then providing that information back out to y'all through dashboards, websites, and regular community engagement, because providing you that information is essential for making sure that y'all are getting the policing that you want out of this community commitment, and then we can be able to sustain this with the Louisville Metro Police far after we're gone.
So I'm going to offer that to expand on that, because there is a question on how will you communicate with the police and make it public, make your findings or recommendations public.
So we'll be having community meetings quarterly, where we will be able to, number one, hear from you, but also report out what the police department and the city are doing. If they are meeting the goals that they set for themselves, if they're meeting the deadlines that they set to meet those goals. We'll be able to publish 2 semi-annual reports that outline their successes, that outline the pathway to success, and whether they're meeting the timelines, meeting the goals, and if they, once again, if they have the willingness but not the capacity, and what will be the pathway to acquire the capacity, and our technical assistance to help them. And so we will be able to hear from you. We'll be able to report that to you in person, whether we come here in this gym or anywhere in the city, whether it's in your city council chambers in front of your city council or any other community forum. We're going to be doing that multiple times a year and then issuing 2 reports a year that lay out that the department is doing what it said it agreed to do. It's moving on pace to do it. Or what do they need? We'll highlight what they need in order to accomplish the goals should they not need it. I'm going to pass this to Eric to finish this out for us.
Part of Alifa's approach is to really take a systematic project management approach to how we measure reform. There's a whole host of sections in the community commitment, and it's a big task. But you manage a big task one stage at a time, and making sure you're clear and communicative about where the department is at every stage. Now, we have the ability and we have the experience of doing a lot of this in our recent client in Minneapolis, and trying to make sure that there is a clear and cogent understanding of what each aspect of your community commitment, in your case, will take in order to achieve that level of compliance and what that means. But it means having that approach of being purposeful about understanding that change management has folks in charge of it and individuals within a department that are held accountable to it, and having that documented approach and sharing those weekly updates within the department and then reporting out in a systematic way. We've done the kind of semi-annual reports that your community commitment has outlined. We've done 3 of them now so far. We're working on a 3rd one right now, in Minneapolis. So we've got that demonstrative experience on our team, and that's a project management approach that we intend on utilizing for our approach here as well.
I think we're going to, let's go to the other. I'm trying to monitor the time.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be in front of you. Thank you so much for coming. I'm excited to speak with you this evening about this. As Steve mentioned, I've been working on police reform in one form or another for about, 25 years now. And I spent a substantial period of that time at the Department of Justice, helping to run the practice that worked on these investigations, like the type you had here in Louisville, and then working with police departments and communities all around the country to try to implement the consent decrees and to try to transform policing in those communities. And through that work, I'm working on monitoring teams too, and working on these agreements with the Department of Justice. There's a few things that I really came to believe are some of the most important roles of the monitor, right? One is technical assistance, which that's not what the question's about, so I'm not going to spend much time talking about it, but I did just want to mention that in terms of being able to provide technical assistance to this department, this team is just truly unmatched in terms of the amount of knowledge we have in how you do this. But to come to the second point of it, the second part is assessing what the police department is doing, and then most importantly, providing that information to everyone so that everyone has that information, right? So we'll work with this police department to say, look, here's how you should do this. Here's our advice on how on the way you should manage this project, right? We suggest doing this first. We suggest that, this is how you do it, and this is the order in which you do it to make sure everybody's operating efficiently. The police department will say, this is what we're doing. This is how the data we're looking at. This is how we're assessing it. We'll take a look at that and we'll help the department figure out, does this say what you think it says? And is this police department doing what the community commitment says that they should? And then critically, providing that information to you in every way that we can think of. And we have a vast amount of experience doing that, of providing really detailed written reports that are accessible, that will explain for every single piece of the community commitment, this is where the police department is in compliance. They've started it, they've made progress, they're in compliance, or they haven't started it yet. And then we will provide you with data and details actually demonstrating that to you. We will provide it to you in community meetings. We will provide it to you in data dashboards, detailed data dashboards online. We will provide it to you in many different types of reports, many of which are laid out in the community commitment. We will be providing this information on social media. All of the different ways that we can think of. We'll also be working with the community to think through what's the best way to get this information out, and critically, how do we get information back from the community so that we can understand what the community needs to understand to know whether or not the police department is in compliance and how far along they are in the process.
Just really quickly, did you?
Oh, I just wanted to, I need to stand, even though most of you still in the back won't be able to see me. I just want to talk briefly about how we did those things in Minneapolis. You can go to our Minneapolis website.
I actually have a question related to specifics, so if we can, yeah, about like specific examples. So I'll give equal time for that. So I'll make sure you get time to do that. I do want to shift gears. There's a couple of just like, technical questions of people trying to understand independent monitors. So these shouldn't be long. They shouldn't be long answers. They should just be pretty quick, right? I just want to get through them. The first one is related to relocation. Does anybody from the team move here or relocate here or be embedded? Are they embedded in the community in any kind of way throughout this process?
We plan, and we said in our proposal that we actually plan to add to our team members of this community. So there will be people that are here. We've reserved 2 spots on our team for members. Now, look, I mean, it could be more, and we won't be able to include everybody, but I think that's the way that I think we're going to best deal with that. And I want to just ask Chief Aiden, because he served as a monitor himself, thoughts about being present in a particular community while one of these is going on.
Thank you, and good evening. It is a really great question, and it's a question that requires thought about your team and their commitments elsewhere. And I'll say that again. Where is your team working? Are they working here primarily, or are they working in 50 other places in the country? One of our commitments is that we will be working heavily focused on Louisville's community commitment with dedicated resources to every single part of the community commitment. So none of us are going to move here, but again, we will have people on the ground, and we will be here frequently. I think half of this team is about an hour flight away. And having worked with the Louisville community before, I've done that trip many times from DC. So it is easy to do.
And I will commit to this community as the monitor that I will not be engaged in any other monitorship while this monitorship is occurring for any other police department.
Thank you.
So we don't move here. Let me talk briefly about the process of monitoring, or really what we think of as coaching the community. In this day and age, we are all used to working virtually. So we know now meetings we used to have in person, we have virtually. We will have data, and a lot of what we do is measure and report out. But we also make a commitment to be here. And so let me talk about the way we've done it in Minneapolis. We as a team, we own the community engagement part. We are not from this community, but it is our job to get to know this community. And it is not one community, it is multiple communities. So what we do is we make it a point that we have robust outreach in Minneapolis. Michael and or I are there at least a week a month. In those weeks, we touch base with the various different communities that are organized about these issues. We talk to Minneapolis as a very diverse community, East African, Somali, indigenous people, the Hmong community. We make it a point to reach out to those communities so that we have the lines of communication to get the direct feedback right back to us, and we build that into our plan. So while we don't move to live here, because the truth is for anybody, you don't need a full-time on-the-ground presence to do this work, but you have to make the investment to know the community and to make the direct lines of communication so that each of you feel you can reach out to us to share your concerns, the concerns of your neighbors, or anybody else can do that. So that's how we approach that, because that's the way we can educate you best about what's going on and get your feedback about what you're perceiving and how the process works for you.
Thank you. So this question, well, I thought that was going to be a quick question, but the very good answers, both teams. The question was just, will you relocate here? But I think it was really good for you to provide context of why and how you will engage. There's a couple of questions about an Office of Inspector General. And so the community wants to know, how have you or how will you work with the Office of Inspector General as monitors?
All right, well, that's a great question, and I'm actually really happy to answer that. So one of the things I've done in my life is served on the board of the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, spent 3 years as president, elected by the membership. Your Inspector General currently, and I think future Inspector Generals down the road, 10, 20, 30 years, I am certain will be members of that association. Part of our job is to work to support the work of the Inspector General through effective reporting, through making sure that we are letting the community know and Metro government know if that agency is getting the resources it needs to do its work, if it has access to the information, the reports, the data, the body-worn camera footage it needs to do its work. As we work to do our collaborative effort to build relationships to promote that change, part of that is building that relationship with the Office of Inspector General and the Inspector General and the staff members. Also, the Civilian Review and Advisory Board is a very important part of that. When you do this kind of work, it sometimes gets complicated because people say, well, who's in charge? What is the oversight? Oversight hasn't worked. And in my experience, people will say oversight has failed, but it's failed to meet expectations because there's not clarity about what the work is. So our work is not to duplicate that of the Inspector General. If we receive complaints, because we want to communicate out, but we also will be receiving communication. In our team, I would be the designated point of contact for community members, working with Marcia Thompson, who's an amazing person for community outreach. We might get complaints. Those would be sent to the Office of Inspector General as long as they fit into what complaints are in your model, in your set of ordinances in the state law. So we would have a strong relationship, not just because of my knowledge and my connections, but because part of our mission, part of why I'm so excited to be part of this team, is that the way we collaborate, the way that we build relationships, and the way that we make sure that all parties are at the table really complements the work of the Inspector General. I can tell you from my own personal experience, it's not easy work, the work of an inspector general or monitor in that form, because if you're doing your job, everybody's a little bit frustrated with you. Whether it's the people who appoint you, the people you report to, the people who are asking things of you, the people that want to see the change. So we understand that part of our role is really to make sure that the police department and the inspector general and the Civilian Review and Advisory Board have the resources they need. And as Michael said, sometimes it's a matter of will, sometimes it's a matter of just making sure that people see what the needs are and are putting those resources into it. And I think you're in a very good position because, again, this community commitment, it's a really powerful thing. I mean, you're here, you may not quite realize how beautiful this idea is, that your community is moving forward without a judge, without a court, to make this happen. And the role of civilian oversight in that is vitally important, but what this community commitment does is also unique for bolstering that work of civilian oversight to support effective policing and create the kind of public safety that every Louisvillian deserves.
Thank you.
I've served on the, appointed by the governor of Ohio, on the Ohio Ethics Commission, and every state has different accountability structures, but I've never been an inspector general myself. Director Davis has in Oakland, California, so I'll ask you to answer this question.
So thank you again. And before I get to that, I think one of the things that's important when we look at the inspector general, the role of the inspector general is each community has developed some type of framework or network for accountability. And I think the key to that is each community has developed it. So in some cases, there's some core principles that we can share around the country. But one of the greatest things that makes our country unique is that we have some 16,000 different law enforcement agencies, local, that are serving some 16,000 agencies, and no one or two are the same. To basically, we talked about a lot of agencies, but we're very crystal clear. We don't know what we don't know when it comes to Louisville, and we basically need to make sure that we are following the structure you have set. With that being said, why this independent monitor system that you have set up is so effective, it relies on our independence. So how will we work with the Office of Inspector General? The same way we'll work with every stakeholder or partner inside of this process. Collaboration, and once again, maintaining the independence to provide you the objective evaluation of what's happening with the police department, with the city, and its commitment. And that would include the framework that you're setting up, because if it turns out to be either something that supports it, then we will identify it. If it happens to be something that hinders it, then we would have to be independent and be brokers of truth. Now, look, our experience tells me, as one who was an inspector general, there's always some tension between inspector generals, civil community, civil review boards and departments, and that is to be understood because all are dedicated and committed to their ideas, and sometimes the jurisdictions or the lanes may cross. I think we can help in the sense of being that independent broker, that independent facilitator to remind everyone what's really at stake. It is those things that you have outlined in the community commitment, and I think that is critical. What makes this team unique is if you look at this challenge that you have, I won't even call it a problem. Our problem has created the challenge. A tragedy has created the challenge. A history of tragedies have created this. And it's not just, and I'm not going to speak for the community, we're all familiar with Breonna Taylor, but it's more than that. We can go back through years and decades to identify tragedies that have led us there, but now we have the challenge of doing something different. But if you look at this team, what we're putting on the table is police chiefs who have asked for Department of Justice to come in and have led through reform. Police prosecutors who have litigated to make sure there is reform. Data scientists who have done the data to evaluate it. Inspector generals who have done it every angle, and prosecutors and public defenders that also represent the community that wants to make sure that it not only has constitutional policing, but is safe. So when you ask about the Inspector General, as one who served in that role, I think it could play a critical role. It plays a role that you have identified, but our role with that would be to partner with that stakeholder the same way we will partner with every other stakeholder and really be the independent brokers of honest information that you deserve. And I think I'm gonna keep saying that one, and I want you to take this one back with you. Independent, objective, accurate, and to be able to provide the technical assistance if things are not going as designed or as intended. And that's where the expertise comes in where we can say what we did in Minnesota, what we did in Louisiana, what we did in Philadelphia, Oakland, is those experiences, especially the experiences of the challenge of change. And that's going to be the biggest challenge of all, is change. None of us likes change, but change is one of the only constants in life. And for those who don't change, they're going to miss the future. So we have to get everyone on board that this is what you have demanded, this represents change, and this is the direction that you're going.
Thank you. We're going to keep moving because we only have a couple more minutes, and I want to give you all adequate time for your final remarks. So I promised that I was going to ask this question, and I've combined two together. They're not a double-barrel question for real, but I did combine two. Can you share a real example where your work made lasting improvements in another city, and how did you measure success? Are you all, okay. You all go first.
Oh, we do? All right. Well, I will try to share the mic a little bit, and I will let Chief Ramsey answer this because he has to pick between two cities, and I want to see which one he picks.
And just be mindful that the answer to this question also cuts into your final remarks. So we want to give
Okay,
you
I will definitely try to be brief. And the second part you might have to, if you haven't noticed, I'm the oldest guy here. I've been hearing him talk about 20 years, and I did 47 years in policing starting in 1968. So that goes back a ways. Anyway, my personal experience from having Washington, for an example, when we had a memorandum of agreement, as I mentioned earlier, with the Department of Justice, it was around officer-involved shootings. Once we completed that with training, policies, and all the things that were recommended, which were all successfully completed, we initially experienced an 85% reduction in the number of officer-involved shootings in that city. It continues to this day, and I think it's over 90%. So it can work. There's no question about it. The same thing in Philadelphia. 2012, I had a spike. That's when I called Ron Davis, who had cops at the time, and asked for collaborative reform to come in and take a look at our department. He gave us about 450 or so recommendations, which every single one was implemented. And again, drastic reduction, about a 40% reduction in use of force in general. By police officers, better emphasis on de-escalation and so forth. Some of the contracts that we have had that have really made a difference, one of our clients was the Salt River Pima Indian community out in Arizona, where we've done work out there. There have been changes out there, and that is really an experience because they have their own constitution and so forth working in that particular community. And we've worked with state attorney generals, both in New York and California, Department of Justice, working with departments out there as well. So we have seen it. I've personally experienced it. And let me tell you something. We never would have turned around Washington, D.C. And anybody who knows D.C. in the 90s knows that they had a lot of issues, okay? It never would have been turned around had we not had that memorandum of agreement, had we not intervened, and we had assistance from the outside. We had a monitor to make sure that we did it and did it right. Ron was one of those subject matter experts on that. That's actually how I met him. And the same thing in Philly. It gives you the ability, the power to be able to get stuff done that you normally would not be able to get done because it requires a great amount of changing of policies, procedures, training, all those kinds of things. And as Ron mentioned earlier, there ain't too many people that like change in our business, but you either change or you perish, one or the other. The environment has changed. It's not the same. You got to change with it. We can do that for you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So let me start in 2021, I think. Montgomery County, Maryland decided to do a voluntary assessment of its police force, and it formed a public task force, and they expressed their views, and Alifa was the consultant. They said what they wanted to see in their community, and we gave them some advice about that. Then we did an audit of the police department against what the community wanted and against our own expertise, and we ultimately came up with 88 recommendations, all of which were accepted by the elected officials, the police department, the public task force, and even the union. And you can actually go to the website today, and they will show you where they are in implementing all those changes. And those changes had to do with how they responded to mental health crises. One of the triggers in Montgomery County was a series of shootings of individuals who were experiencing mental health crisis. we went in and our recommendations that they implemented turned it into a broader, more ecosystem-wide approach to mental health response. Vehicle stops and traffic stops, they made changes in that community based on our recommendations. But on a bigger scale, let me set up a softball for Chief Harrison, because when I started as a monitor in New Orleans, the Department of Justice called New Orleans the most troubled big city police department in the country. But in the time that we have been there, New Orleans has become a model for many, many policing practices. Its policies are looked to by other cities. There was a program that New Orleans created called Ethical Policing is Courageous. It was a peer intervention program developed by the department with our assistants that taught officers to intervene before a colleague did something that would get them in trouble. It is a program that saves lives and careers. That program has now been adopted nationally as the active bystandership law enforcement program. So that is a change that happened in New Orleans in conjunction with our work. I don't want to take undue credit for it because it was really initiated by New Orleans, that has spread nationally. And I'll let Chief Harrison talk about some of. I'm going to give him the mic.
1 minute.
So it was very important, thank you, David. It was very important that we take ownership. Number one, when I met David, David was the monitor. It was the second year of the consent decree. I told David the consent decree will not take credit for the reform in the New Orleans Police Department. We are going to own it, and in the end, we are going to not only self-assess, but self-correct ourselves. EPIC was the catalyst that allowed the entire culture to change, because we taught officers how to step in front of their colleagues, their friends, their relatives, to stop the bad act from happening. Over time, we were able to do that. Uses of force came down by 50%. Complaints came down by 50%. Citizen satisfaction came up, and people started reporting compliments of seeing officers stop other officers from doing the wrong thing. In the end, once again, that became ABLE, which is now a national model, and New Orleans is being credited for that. But we wanted to take ownership. We were willing to say we are as bad as we were accused, but now we're able to say all of this together has made New Orleans a model police department, and we thank you for it.
Thank you. So we are at the conclusion of my questions. I just want to apologize that I didn't get through every single question, but there were a lot of great questions, and I hope that I did an adequate job of distilling them into themes. So we are now at the time for your final remarks. I just want to give you a heads up that people are concerned about the timeline and things of that nature. So if you want to include anything related to that in your final remarks, that would be great. So I think this side goes first, right? Yep.
Thank you. It is an honor, a privilege, a pleasure to be here as a finalist, hoping to be your monitor for your community commitment. We bring this diverse team together of police, law enforcement, civil rights, subject matter experts, data analysts, all together with a collaborative experience that we have demonstrated in the past in multiple places, that we hope to be able to monitor the Louisville Police Department as it has made promises to do the very same thing, to become a world-class, first-class police department. And we believe through your community commitment, they can do that. We will, of course, monitor robustly, boldly, honestly, whether they are doing what they have said they will do. We will be independent. We will be open, honest brokers to come to you, hear from you about what you're seeing, about what you're hearing, what is changing, what is not, and what is taking a long time, so that we can go back, offer technical assistance from the collaborative wealth of experience that we have to help them do what it is they otherwise may not know how to do that they're asked to do. This is about change management. Change management, and we are change management experts. We have done it. We're not going to be doing it for the police department. They're going to be doing it, but we will be able to honestly and boldly tell you whether they are doing it, whether they're meeting their goals, whether they're meeting their deadlines, whether their will and capacity align, and where there is a need for more capacity, we can make recommendations on how and what they should get and how soon and fast they should get it so that they can be in compliance. The goal is for them to be a self-assessing, self-correcting police department. Because at some point, all of this will go away. And it is incumbent on the city and the police department to self-assess and self-correct itself, to build systems of accountability that informs the department of what things happen, what to do about it, who knows what when, and when you find out what's done about it and what's the thing done, the appropriate thing. That's what this is designed to do, and it is your community commitment.
And if I may add,
Really quickly.
if I may add, we're here because you're looking for something different. Louisville is a place that is different. It's unlike anywhere else. You're primed to do something different, and you want a team that can deliver on that, that is closer to the opportunity of the work that is different in this season of policing. It does not look like it did 10, 15, or 20 years ago when I started, almost 30 years ago. It looks very different. So you want practitioners that can bring you that different perspective from the more recent times of policing and the challenges that it brings so that we can find a pathway forward in support of Louisville.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, thank you very, very much for the honor of competing here and presenting to you and sharing the stage with such wonderful people. It really is an honor. To me, you know, this community commitment, I ask myself, what is it? To me, this is an opportunity. That's what this is. You know, I said this before, I'll say it again. I'm excited to be here because you didn't have to, as a community, you didn't have to do this. The Department of Justice, even after an agreement, walked away from the agreement. And it really shows me the heart of a community, that you decided that on your own, you were going to take the provisions, many of them in that consent decree, and you were going to hold yourselves accountable to change. And it is our role, it would be our honor and our role as monitors to help in that. Now, what three things will we do as monitors? So first, right, we will assess, right? You've heard about that. We will measure. We will probe. We will analyze whether or not the items that are in the community commitment are happening, how they're happening, how quickly they're happening. And we will communicate that to you in plain English in any way we can, not in law speak, not in cop speak, in plain speak. Over and over and over again until you're sick of hearing from us. Number two, we'll provide technical assistance. There is no team, I say this humbly because I'm not talking just about me, there is no team in the world with as much breadth of experience in police reform as 21 CP team. There just isn't. In geography all over the country, in big and small departments, in every kind of reform effort, dozens and dozens of communities have come to 21 CP. So what does that mean? It's not going to be like Louisville. You're going to have your own solutions, but we're going to be there to give you the benefit of that breadth of experience, all the different options out there that you can consider as a community, right? Many of them you have already considered, right? The city already has hundreds of drafted policies, I read, and hundreds of new trainings that are ready to be evaluated. We can't wait to work with the city to look with them. And third, right, the third thing that we need to do is we will connect. We will be project managers. Everybody's throwing around that word, but what does it mean? It means making sure, and I've seen this so many times, as have other people, that work isn't wasted, that energy isn't wasted, running down rabbit holes only to find out later, right, that you're not actually doing the thing that the monitors are going to expect you to do. We will work, roll up our sleeves, and work with the city to establish the metrics, the guidelines, the goals, so that there's one goalpost. You asked about being interested in getting this done. The thing that prevents communities from doing this quickly is when the goalposts change partway through, when all the energy and enthusiasm is wasted at the beginning because something changes. Now, we have to be flexible, but we have to hold ourselves as monitors to the notion of providing clear goals so that the city can understand what we are going to do to evaluate the progress that's made, right? That is crucially important. And we have more experience than you can possibly imagine doing that hard, unglamorous work of project management along with the city. So thank you very, very much for having us here. It is an honor to be able to compete for this. I will tell you one thing at a personal level. I am dedicated to the idea of Louisville and its reform effort. It is inspiring to me. And if you give us the honor of doing this, I'll do everything in my power to earn the chance that you've given me.
Thank you. So we are at time. If we can please thank 21 CP and Effective Law Enforcement for All for even caring enough to be here for our community. So the final next steps is, we want feedback, right? They want feedback. So a survey will be posted on the Louisville Metro Community Commitment website as soon as this concludes. Please be sure to complete the entire survey for both teams. So to have your survey counted, the survey will be open for the next 24 hours. After that, Louisville Metro government will announce the contract awards shortly after those scores have been tabulated. Again, I want to thank everyone in this room, but also everyone who watched on the live stream for your interest and care for our community. And again, thank you to the two finalist teams for being here and your interest in our community. So thank you all.